Hey YouTube, it's Wisconsin Shoe Guy here, and I'm talking today about shoes made in Portugal. I have four examples that I wanted to show you. Two on the left. This is a Herring Lockenhurst, and it doesn't say it's made in Portugal. It only says that it's made in the EU. But I did a little bit of research, and that seems to be where that particular factory is. This is a Yves and Gray Vickers. And I talked to them, and I know that that was made in Portugal. And then I have a Portuguese brand, which is Carlos Santos, which is, these are Carlos Santos split toes here. And then this is actually a Herring Rochester, but it's co-branded Carlos Santos right here. Okay, so you can see it is a legit Carlos Santos shoe, and I think what's interesting about this is it really epitomizes everything about Portuguese footwear you'd want to know in one shoe, and I'll go into that in just a second. But first things first, let's talk a little bit about why companies choose to manufacture in Portugal. You know, the labor rates in Portugal seem to be slightly less than they are in Spain, and certainly less than they are in Europe or Italy. And so companies decide, and they have a great shoemaking tradition. They make very, very fine shoes. And so you have companies like Yves and Gray, where they're using Italian leather. They're based in the UK, and they're looking for ways of being able to manufacture on a little bit less expensive, but also keeping it in Europe. And so Portugal is a great place to go to in order to do that. There are countries that have a lower labor rate, like Romania or Hungary, but mostly, the shoes that are coming out of there are either on the less expensive, less quality side, or their stuff is very much like a hand welted, like a St. Crispin's out of Romania, or a Vass out of Budapest. So, or Heinrich Dinklager, which is also factoried in Budapest. So, different things to think about there. So, but Herring and Yves and Gray chose to find factories there to do the work. And if you just take a look at the quality, the quality of the stitching, the density of the stitching, the choices that are made, this is all superior to like an Allen Edmonds level in the U.S. Now the quality of the materials. This is a corrected grain leather and is treated as such to keep that shine all the time. But that's a desirable thing in much of Europe, and so not holding that against them, the construction of the shoe itself seems really good. The stitch density on the sole, the stitch density on the uppers, the way that they're able to hide, do the reverse stitch, everything is done and executed very, very well. And these shoes are $150. They're not expensive, so that's just a thing that I think is worth mentioning. They're able to do some really nice things. Yves and Gray, you've got some leather issue here in the lining issue, which I talked about during my review, but if you look at the construction itself, the Goodyear welt construction here, if you look in the sole, it is pretty long. The stitches are very long, and the density is not good, but that may be a factor of a choice that Yves and Gray made, or that may be a choice that the factory made. I'm not sure, so I can't really tell. But it's overall, the construction is very good. And then you get into Carlos Santos, and the construction is just absolutely out of this world. You see this density here is twice as dense as most of the things you'll see coming out of the United States. I would put this on par with Alden, at least in terms of stitch density. In terms of design, I would rate it higher because I think that Carlos Santos is doing new, innovative, sleek designs. You get a very European-looking shoe, and yet you get a fresh update on designs that are coming out of that house. So they also have this patina service that you can see at some of the dealers. I know the Noble shoe is a great example of one, and you're able to get some really, really cool looking shoes. and at quite reasonable prices. Carlos Santos also has a hand grade line that looks every bit as good as what you would see coming out of Crockett and Jones. So for considerably less money, right? So it's a good option. Now when you get to the leather quality itself, do these feel as good as like a Crockett and Jones? No, they don't, right? So there is always a give and take. But the quality of the construction, which is what I'm talking about here, as I do the shoes constructed in different areas, the quality of the construction is very good. Here's another example. This is a Carlos Santos branded one directly. They've got day-night soles. The construction here is also very good. All you have to do really is look at this split toe. Look at the way that came out. It's almost invisible. And the hand stitching here along the apron is just absolutely beautifully executed in this nice rope pattern. Like that a lot. So I'm a fan of Carlos Santos. I think that they make great shoes. I look forward to picking up another pair as well. So this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. That's a little bit about shoes from Portugal. I personally highly recommend Carlos Santos. The construction of the other brands is good. As I said, sometimes you see some things that leave something to be desired, but I mean even the stitch density here, I really find that to be just really, really interesting and really good. So certainly can't take anything away, and really find the overall shoes from that country to be of high quality. So this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey, this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and I'm here to talk today about shoes made in Hungary. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Budapest shoes. As you look at the traditions of what you get with Budapest shoes, you're going to get some really, really high-end, some really beautiful shoes. And there's just it's a city with a great shoemaking tradition. So let's look at the Budapester, and this is one example of it. This is from Vass, and this is a full brogue derby, and this is a hand constructed shoe. So this is hand lasted, hand welted. This is actually an open channel shoe that they nailed. They actually nailed the seam around it shut. So that's, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's called a closed channel, where if it's actually done and flapped back, that's called a blind channel or blind stitch. Subtle but important difference, I think. And Vass does a great job, right? I've got a couple pairs that are made by Vass. This one is actually designed and made by Vass, right? And just a very, very high level of construction. If you look at the stitching on the upper, this is probably on the densest side of any shoe that I own. And the leather quality is also just fantastic. So been really happy with this. This is on the new Peter Last. Fit is great. Really, really interesting shoe. Now, Vass is also known for doing some work for other shoemakers, and because their hand lasting is so good. And so what I want to do now is I want to show you one, and I'm brushing them as I go here. So this is an Ascot Con. Now Ascot Shoes is in England, and they work with Vass a lot. They have a factory in Northampton where they do the stitching on the upper, especially this part of the apron and this on the split toe, which, by the way, is hard work. I bought a pair of Alden's in the US boots that have that same stitching, and the wait on it was about 15 months because they have so few people in the factory who are actually able to do it. So I think that's really telling. I mean, this is hard work to be done, and so I'm impressed by that, and certainly something to be done. This particular stitch they do in such a way that it really resembles, some of the only shoes that I've seen that really do this stitch the right way. There's a couple shoemakers out of Vietnam that I know are taking this kind of stitch on. But then, this is really the big shoe houses, like the Edward Green and the, you see St. Crispin's with some of this, but I mean, this is really, really good. So, but Vass lasts this. They put it together. Now this, I believe, is a blind stitch. So they actually do the channel. They have a really nice beveled waist on this. This actually goes from a double sole here down to a single sole at the waist. So they've carved it out real nice. Now it's not a fiddleback waist, right? But it's a narrow waist, which is nice. The nail work that they do on the heels is just incredible. And the other stitching that they do here is crazy. As a matter of fact, if I look at the two Vasses together, this stitching is probably 50% less. So, and I'm not sure, honestly, whether or not that's done in England or whether that's done in Budapest, because it's a hybrid shoe, so it's hard to tell. But it's very impressive nonetheless. So, another example, really fine Budapest shoe. Now, there's a company in Germany that makes shoes and bought a company in Budapest. So the company is Heinrich Dinklacker, and they're a pretty well-known German shoemaker, and they actually were bought by Shoe Passion a couple of years ago, and they have a corporate headquarters in Germany, but the factory is in Budapest. And I took a look and bought a couple pairs of their shoes. I have this really interesting four-eye chukka, which is a little different as a mid-range boot with 4 eyes, but they've got a really nice medallion on there. This is a very interesting leather. It's very similar to CXL or Chrome XL by Horween, but it's not quite the same. And they've got this beautiful cognac color. It just sort of has this different way of breaking to it, and yet I've worn these for a couple of years now, and the seams and the creasing is basically non-existent. It's really, really, really fine, and really kind of stretches right out again. The whole leather just has this like crackability to it, which is really cool, and I really like the way it looks as a casual boot. If you look at the sole on this, they've got nail work. They've got 3 nails, 3 nails, 3 nails. Then they have 3 nails, 3 nails, 3 nails. They do the same at the toe, right? So this is a Heinrich Dinklacker thing. This is also blind stitched, and they have big soles, so you're not going to find narrow waists at HD, but it's a really good, completely handmade shoe, and I would say something that's just fun to wear, and the stitch density, everything like that, just really, really fine. Although not as fine as it is on Vass, right? So if you look at the upper, it's not quite the same. So here's another example, and this is a HD Buddha, so it's a Budapest, and it's on the Buddha last, and the other is on the Luzern last, if you're interested. And this is a 3 eyelet shoe, which is different from as a derby, because if you look at a 5 eyelet derby and you look at a 3 eyelet derby, you see a lot more vamp on a 3 eyelet derby, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because what does the eyelets mean? It means that there's less of them, so that there's more room in the vamp of the shoe. But this has a really different look, and then this has this really cool stitching along the bottom here. I believe they call this a Goiser welt, and it's basically braided over braided over braided. So very, very hand central construction here, and something that I think really provides a lot of detail and a lot of handwork. And then this sole, it's just like the other one. You get your 3 nails, your 3 nails, your 3 nails. And these aren't really nails, right? These are brass pegs that they nail into the sole and then they cut off, right? So it's it's an interesting methodology. What I will tell you is that these shoes wear very slowly. I wear these a lot, and haven't had any significant wear. So and I have a lot of shoes. So when I say a lot, it's not a lot, right? But I've only had these a few months, maybe 6 months. So but I've probably worn them a dozen times, which is a lot for somebody who has 80 pairs of shoes in 6 months, right? So I like them. They really come out well, and real happy with the way that they come out. Now, so those are the shoes that I own from Budapest. I'm interested in hearing your experience. If you have some that you're really pleased with, please drop a comment, let me know. I feel like a lot of us can learn from each other on the channel, just in comments, so feel free to join in the conversation. Thanks all, and have a wonderful day.